Hi, this video is about the types of NIH grants that you might apply for. I'm sure you've seen grant numbers that have R's and F's and K's and all different numbers and O1s and O5s, and you're probably wondering what all these different types of grants are. So I'm going to talk about how the grants differ and how you can tell from the number what type of grant it is and what the implications of that are. So first of all, the types of NIH grants. The most common are research grants, like an R01 or an R03 or an R21. Those are grants where you do a research project. That is different from fellowship grants, which is what most of you in the class are going to be applying for. Fellowships grants are for students to obtain some training and do research at the same time. You actually obtain the training while you're doing the research. So that's like an F31. It can also be an F32 if it's for a postdoc. Then there are Ks. So you sometimes hear of junior faculty member getting a K01. That is a grant that still includes training, but it also includes research. So it's similar to a fellowship, but the person is an independent faculty member. So they're not a trainee anymore. They're sort of a junior faculty person doing their first research project, but also being mentored by senior faculty. And there are KO1s, which are the new faculty ones. Then there are other Ks like KO2s that's for more senior people. There are Ks for very senior people. There are K23s, which are for clinicians who are trying to get mentored research experience. So K is usually like a mentored research grant for career development. Then there are Ts, which are training grants. So a T, you're not going to apply for by yourself. A T is obtained by an institution, like USC has some T32s, and we can put students into these slots where they get funding. So you wouldn't apply for a T on your own, but you might get a slot on an existing T. Ps are center grants. Ps are like a collection of R01s all around the same theme. So that is really big, and that's the kind of thing that has a very senior leader. But you could be involved in a P because you could be helping on one of the projects, or you could be a trainee on the P. Us are cooperative agreements, which mean that NIH is more closely involved. So it's more like a CDC grant where NIH people are, monitoring your progress really closely and maybe helping you coordinate with other centers. Then there are these SBIRs and STTRs. Those are small business grants. And then the LRP is loan repayment, which you could all apply for if you have student loans. That sort of talks about you and your progress and your plans to stay in the research field. And if you're an excellent candidate, NIH will pay your student loans. So that's a really good benefit, and you should look into that if you have heavy student loans. So the deadlines. Most NIH grants are due in these 3 cycles of deadlines. So like if you're applying for a plain old R01, it could be due February, June, or October 5th. And then this shows the cycles for other grants. So usually it's 3 times a year. So, and sometimes they're a little bit off. So, you could have the Fs are due April, August, and December 8th, which is nice because then the grants people aren't too busy to work with you because they're not rushing to get out the R01s for the faculty, which are due February, June, and October. So, but you have to meet one of these deadlines, and they keep going. So it doesn't matter. It's like if you're trying for April 8th and you don't make it, then just shoot for August 8th. It's no big deal. And you can change your mind about that at any time. So, maybe pick a date to shoot for, but don't worry if you're not done at that point. It's better to put it off by a few months and go for the next date than to send in something that's not quite done. Okay, and then this chart also tells you when it'll be reviewed and when the earliest start date is. So even though the deadlines are different, it's still like a spring cycle. Like cycle 1 is still basically a spring application cycle, and everything that's submitted in the spring will be reviewed in the fall, and then the earliest start date is the next spring. So an interesting thing about that is you basically start the grant, the money actually comes about a year after you submitted the grant, so you need to plan some time. Okay, so you submit this whole thing and then you wait around for a year before the money comes in, and that's if you get funded on the first try, which is no guarantee. And similarly for the summer cycle, if you submit a grant in the summer in cycle 2, you submit the application from like June to August, and it gets reviewed in February through March, and then you hear about it. The earliest possible start date is July. So again, it's like a year. And the same thing for the fall cycle. You submit it in October to December. You hear about it. The review happens in June or July, and then the earliest start date is the next September. So really, when you're submitting a grant, make sure to realize that you're not going to get to start this for about a year. So it's a good idea to apply early, but it's not a good idea to apply when you're not ready. That's not going to help you at all. Okay, so these are different types of Rs. So an R01 is the basic standard research project that most faculty will go for. It's 5 years long. It's the most common grant. It's usually below 500,000 per year, although you can get permission to ask for more than 500,000, but it's kind of hard to get permission. Usually if you ask for permission to go over this cap, the $500,000 cap, NIH will basically say, why do you need to go above the cap? You know, you should stay below the cap, but it's happened. And R01s usually go for 3 to 5 years. The max is 5 years, and most people go for 5. And then R03s are a smaller grant. That's if you don't need to do a huge project with huge costs, you know, maybe you want to do some secondary analysis or a pilot study, you would go for an R03. And that's a maximum of 2 years with 50,000 per year. So it's much lower. And you might think like, oh, 50,000 a year is a lot, but it's really not that much because, you know, it pays for maybe part of one person or very small parts of a few people. Then there are exploratory developmental research grants, which are R21s. And those are 2-year projects for something that's a little outside of the box. So something where maybe you don't have a lot of pilot data, but you still have a really good innovative idea. Okay, so mostly what you'll be seeing is probably R01s, and what we'll be talking about in this class will be mostly Fs, but I just wanted to make sure you know that there are different types of Rs, and the difference is basically the money and how long they last. Okay, so NIH fellowships. So this is what this class is about. This is how to apply for an F31. And the F31 is called the Ruth L. Kirchstein Predoctoral Individual National Research Service Award. Okay, so you can go to this link, this researchtraining.nih.gov, programs, fellowships, and you can see all the different types of Fs. So there are Fs for MD PhDs, there are grants, there are Fs for PhD students, there are Fs for postdocs, Fs for senior fellows, you know, all kinds of different Fs. But the one that's appropriate for PhD students is the F31. Okay, so that's what we'll be talking about. And there's also an F31 diversity for people who are members of groups that are underrepresented in science. So if you think you might be in a group that's underrepresented in science, go to the website and see if you meet the criterion. Because those have slightly lower pay lines, which means they'll fund slightly a higher percentage of the applications. So if you can qualify for diversity, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to go for it. Although you have to fill out some extra forms explaining why you're a member of a diverse group, but it's not that hard. Okay, then this confuses people a little bit. NIH also has dissertation grants, which are different from Fs. So this is an R36, and because it's an R, that tells you that it's basically a research grant. It's not training. So this is like if you've gotten all the training you want to get and you just want to do the darn dissertation without people training you anymore, if you're just kind of done being mentored and you want to just do the dissertation, you could go for an R36. Usually to get that, you have to have a really excellent publication record. You have to be pretty advanced, so you would get this for like your final year of a graduate program, and you don't have to write all the mentorship stuff. Okay, but they are pretty hard to get. So it's an option, but you know, you have to kind of weigh the pros and the cons of both. And this is the pros and cons of both. The one problem with the R36 is that it's only offered by certain NIH institutes. So it's offered by NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, NIMHG, which is Minorities and Health Disparities, NIA, which is Aging, and AHRQ, which is Health Services. So if your topic fits into one of those, you're good. But if your topic doesn't fit into one of those, then you can't really apply for an R36. And let's see, and R36 is also only 1 to 2 years. So it's basically to do a dissertation. It's not to, hang around and get trained. So you do that really at the end of your research. Whereas an F31 can last you 5 years. It's really nice. R36 gives you money to actually do the research. It gives you $50,000 to pay your own stipend plus, incentives for participants, maybe a helper, some supplies, travel, things like that. The F31 does not pay that. The F31 basically pays you your salary to do your work. It doesn't pay your mentors. It doesn't pay the research costs. It's basically just paying you. So it's like buying out your time so you don't have to do an RA-ship or TA-ship. F31 needs a really defined mentorship plan. So you have to pick your mentors and have them write a statement and have it all come together so that the mentorship plan will help you do the research, and the research plan will help you get experience in the idea in the areas where you need mentorship, and it all kind of comes together like that. Whereas in R36, it's like you've already designed the program, you've designed the research, and you're just going to do it, and it doesn't. You're saying that you don't really need mentorship. You just need the money and the protected time to do the work. And the review criteria are a little bit different. For the F31, it's more about you as an applicant and about your sponsor. So they're actually, it's your grant proposal, but they're actually also reviewing your mentors. How good are they? And how, what's their experience, and how many people have they mentored before, and how much time did they have to mentor you? And also the training plan. So the things, the actual activities that you propose to get yourself trained in whatever areas that you decide you need training in, and how that's going to lead you to become an independent investigator. And they're also looking at the training potential, the institutional environment. So it's more like, how successful is this person going to be, given that they're at this institution with this group of mentors, how likely is it that this person is going to turn into an independent investigator? So the emphasis is less on the science and more on the training, although the science is certainly important. They both have to be good. For the R36, the review criteria are basically just like an R grant. It's the significance of your research, the innovation of your research, the approach, how good are you as an investigator, and your environment. So it's less about training your mentors and more about just you. Okay, so these are the different types of grants, and later we'll talk about how to identify different research priorities and how to figure out which institute to apply for, and how to work within that system. Thank you.